once again. We're doing actually three more of these.
Yeah, 3 races, and then usually do a post. So probably 4 more, 3 for the
Four more
for
to
actual
oh
upcoming
four.
race weekends. Yeah,
Yeah, 3 more of these previews and 1 to wrap up the year. It's coming.
crazy how quick it's gone. Yeah, feels like we're
And
just
then
February talking the Clash, and here we are talking championship now.
yep, and it'll be here in 2024 before we know it with the Daytona 500 because it comes right after the Super Bowl.
Pretty
So
much, yep.
goes by real fast. Anyway, 1 playoff race in the books, round of 8, and not really an unexpected outcome, though it did get
Nope.
rather interesting towards the end. And that really wasn't surprising based on how the race went because we knew that Bell was the faster car on the long runs. So it was just a matter of time before he was going to overtake Larson, but he just needed another lap or 2 and just couldn't get it.
Nope. That's why I always say I like when these races end on the scheduled distance like this one did because the right guy won. I mean, they had that planned. They had it just, hey, we just need to be good at 267. If this was 268,
Yeah, right.
yeah, Bell was probably going to win.
Yeah,
But
but the thing was, it was interesting. Is usually sometimes in those situations you're like, oh man, I think we needed caution. But you knew if you were a Christopher Bell fan, you couldn't. You just had to catch him
no,
because if there was a caution, you came back out again. He was gonna beat you on the start anyway.
yep, exactly. Larson had the shorter run, and I think a little bit in practice you could look at for the tires for Chevys. We obviously saw more troubles, but it was as a longer run. So you knew Larson, and he admitted to this. They just kind of took it easy. Once he hit about 20 to go, then 15 to go, is let's not risk this thing blowing and having an issue. So let's take it easy. So that contributed to Bell coming back too, because Bell did have a faster long run car. Larson was also babying a little bit because, yeah, you don't want to take that risk. We saw Elliott obviously have his practice issue. Larson had an issue. He pit before he crashed. Byron had an issue. Bowman had an issue during the race. So that was in the back of their mind was let's not cause the caution here because we're in a really good spot. Let's just get this thing home, and it worked. I mean, you combine all those factors, you get a photo finish, but Larson, he deserved it. He led 133 of the 100 or 267 laps. So we called that in the show last week. We said he was probably the favorite to win this race, and he rightfully won. Now you got to look at he's the championship favorite because this race, the last 2 years, in 3 of the last 5, the driver to win the round of 8 opener has won the championship in the end. And I thought it was interesting that Cliff Daniels, Larson's crew chief, and Larson himself were saying they feel this 2023 team, the camaraderie, everything they've learned is better than the 2021 season where they won 10 races and led over 2,500 laps.
Yeah,
So
we'll see.
I think it's all
win first, and then maybe we'll go down that road.
Get the championship.
I don't know. I don't buy that. I don't. Come on. I mean, before his win on Sunday, we were talking about how him and Truex, we weren't sure if they were going to make it to the round of 8 going into the race a couple of weeks ago. So it's win the championship.
I think
that's the kind of stuff you can talk about.
Yeah, I think it also shows too this playoff format is just weird. Is those two weren't great on those round of 12 tracks. We knew that. And then there's still a championship front runner, but you could get to the championship race and let's say he won 12 races this year. And if he doesn't win at Phoenix, he's not going to be the champion. So no. I just don't like this format. Just as the years go on, it's hard to make sense of it. They race 35 races one way, and that final race is just, hey, points aside, doesn't matter. You just got to beat the other 4 the other 3 to the finish line, and you're the champion. So it just seems a weird way. In fact, my 9-year-old, after church on Sunday, made a point. He goes, why don't they make the playoffs like the round of 16? There's 16 races left of the season, and you get to the round of 8. There's 8 races left of the season, and then your round of 4 is your final 4 races of the season. The points crown the champion. I'm like, because that makes too much sense. That would make way too much sense, but that would be better, I think, because you have a larger sample size other than just 3 races in a round. Kind of the cream would rise to the top. Plus, I like, Denny Hamlin's mentioned that too. I like multiple races to determine champion rather than one. Let's at least, if you're going on points on the season, I don't feel like you should throw points aside in the last race because things can happen. It doesn't matter how good you are getting that race. If you, as we said, if you struggle at Phoenix and that's the championship race every year, then you're in trouble. You might not ever win a championship. Or Larson and Truex's case, they're not necessarily haven't been good on road courses and super speedways. Well, 4 of the first 6 playoff races next year are on those tracks. They could be in some trouble. So it just seems weird. It just feels weird talking about how, like in the NFL, like, oh, the Chiefs just do not play good in that stadium. They just don't have it. But the Super Bowl is going to be in that stadium every year, and it's down to that one team, and it just seems weird. It's hard to put my finger on it other than that. But
the big difference, though, is, of course, not that IndyCar has given in, and they're an American sport, but it's like it's American. That's what American fans want. They don't want to see the championship race already decided 3 weeks ago. It's just the way it is.
It is.
We agree. It's not set up perfectly at all. But I mean, I guess it goes back to it's the sport. The sport is something unique that is different to stick and ball sports. Yep. It is, and we completely get that too. But unfortunately, unless they kind of create a system that we can all agree upon, and again, there's ways that they can do that because there's so many things that we wish they would do that they don't. Until we get even to that point, I mean, as somebody that enjoys the scenario of a championship race or a championship something, I'd rather have this than see what happened, of course, in years past with Matt Kenseth and all that other stuff. And nobody wants to see that. And we've talked before about, hey, is there a way that you can actually not win a race, whether through the playoffs or even the regular season, and win the championship? And yeah, I guess you could. There is a way.
Yep.
So
I mean, I think it would be interesting if Bell doesn't win this round. He's only 3 points out, makes it to Phoenix, doesn't win Phoenix, and let's just say Joey Logano wins Phoenix again, but he's not in the championship, and Christopher Bell finishes second. He could win a championship in his only win of the season, then on dirt. Yeah. Sure. So, but in saying that too, in order for him to get to Phoenix for a shot to win a championship, he's going to have to rattle off a bunch of top 5s here these next couple weeks. It may seem gimmicky, but on results wise, it's hard to fault somebody when, hey, you didn't win, but you did have 3 top 5s in the round of 8 and then a runner up in Phoenix. So it just seems weird. I mean, I get what they're looking for, because also, I mean, to win a championship, you kind of have to win the last game. That's kind of part of it. So to win a cup championship, it's happened every year. We know Phoenix, it's one of the championship 4 drivers, is going to win. It's happened every year since 2014. I don't know why it would stop now. So you have to win the race. But on the flip side too, it also just seems kind of fishy that the whole race they run 1, 2, 3, 4. It just seems
ridiculous. Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that maybe there is a way, and I don't know, maybe if whether your son or one of our viewers can actually go in and meticulously look at, okay, if I had the responsibility of coming up with a system like your son talked about, okay, well, how would it work? Because what we would need is, we would need, say, if there were those last 3 races or 4 races, we would need to make sure that by the last race, that a certain number of drivers all had a chance to win a championship. And not like, okay, all that one driver has to do is finish 30th and, the other, not anything crazy like that, but he does have the advantage. If he goes in and, say, wins 2 out of 3 races, and he's dominating those 3 out of 4, say, if we're going to use 4 races, he should be in a position where, maybe if he finishes in the top 15 and does this and that respectable, then he deserves it. I'm okay with that. I'd be fine with that.
Same.
Yeah, but I
Because it
don't know what
still
that
comes to the
is.
last race. Yeah, I don't need that. I think I do like the 3 rounds, like or the 3 in each round. Because I don't think, like you said, if somebody barring a sweep of their round, they're not going to clinch it. Probably going to keep the 4 drivers each time. I like the thing of the aspect of maybe 3 races, 4 drivers, and then whoever has the most points at the end of it. And then it might open up more. They don't have to win the season finale, or maybe they might enter third of the 4 into that final race and they win, and maybe the other 2 have some troubles. I mean, I think it opens up. You have stage points because it just feels weird that last race where it's like, stage points don't matter. We've counted them all year, but it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it just feels weird. I just think it's weird to
and they
race
take breaks
races.
too.
Yeah, if that's the case, if stages are gone, then I'd almost rather just just keep going. Yeah. Let's just run this thing to the completion, or flip side, just shorten the race. It's going to be the 4 anyways. But yeah, there's right now. It makes me wonder. I wrote about this over the weekend. It was posted this morning about Larson's in the situation now to where obviously there's a clear advantage of winning that first round of 8 race for the championship because yes, they could tinker on that Phoenix car now. Why would the other 7 drivers and teams left? You can't focus on Phoenix unless you're there, and the points, other than a few drivers, are still kind of condensed. So you can't look at Phoenix yet because you got to look at Homestead. But Larson on the flip side, you risk if you focus everything ahead and don't look at now. It almost to me reminds me like preseason football where teams aren't focusing on the exhibition games and they're sloppy and it's hard the first few weeks to kind of like.
Well, Larson has the example. Didn't he win his championship winning 2 in the round of 8, I believe?
Yeah. And that's why I almost wonder because what happened with like Logano last year
and he did
with
that,
Larson. Yeah. Logano won Vegas and then Larson won Homestead, but Larson was in the drivers' championship. So that meant going to Martinsville, nobody other than Logano still clinched. Larson is dominant at Homestead, really good at Darlington. It almost serves him well to have half the team focusing on that Phoenix car, the other half, let's just go out and win again. Let's not ruin this momentum we've got now. Let's go win and let's keep another driver from clinching, and therefore they still can't focus on Phoenix yet and open that advantage even more. So I think they're kind of in that teetering situation is which one do you focus more on? Do you focus on Phoenix? Because if you don't focus on Phoenix too much and somebody else wins this week, then they're kind of equal with you, and that throws out the advantage you have from this whole week of preparing for Phoenix.
Well, what does Larson, what does he get as an advantage for the next 2 races for the championship race?
The one thing they do is this. So like the team will start working on the car. They'll get everything. They'll probably build something new, go off so you can scour through all the notes from the last couple of years at Phoenix, all the short tracks, all the trends, everything to get that car dialed in, just constantly massaging it, making it sure that the wrap's tight. Everywhere there is just nothing, the engine's dynoed well, just there is no loose ends on that race car. You can just, which takes time, but you have the most time right now to deal with that. Where Larson can start, hey, maybe I won't focus too much on Homestead trends and try to get better there. Maybe I just start looking at Phoenix and studying those notes and where do I need my lines be? How can I qualify better? How can I do? You can really look ahead because none of these other drivers have that luxury right now.
But he has no advantage if he goes out there and wins either of these races.
There's nothing. Yeah.
Nothing.
The only advantage I would say he would have is keeping another driver from clinching.
That's it.
Which means that's it.
Well, see, that's also ridiculous. I mean, how does he not? I mean, there should be something. Maybe it's pole position. Something that he should get.
Because you got to think too. Like even they mentioned on the broadcast last week that with his 2 stage wins, which is the playoff point, it doesn't matter because you don't go by points in Phoenix. So
yeah,
technically he got 7 playoff points by winning Vegas, 5 for the race win, 2 for the stages. That doesn't matter. You can't carry those with you to the championship 4. So it just seems Yeah, there's just nothing. There's nothing to be gained for them other
In a way,
than
it almost
the only.
it's like they shouldn't even be racing. It's like, well, don't
That's
race. But of course, you got sponsors, and that's where you run into the
yep.
whole sponsor thing, and it's just that's why there
He
is
could
no
take the
perfect
2 weeks
system.
off. Yeah, you just need to show up and qualify, and you're still eligible. It's like just qualify, run 2 laps, park the car, and go home. It's
But look,
and on the
he did win, as we said. I mean, he is the only driver that has won 2 of the 3 races and then won the championship. Logano and Larson are the only drivers to win the first playoff race in the round of 8 and the title. And in
yep.
saying that, you can look at it and you go, well, Logano did it twice. Larson's the only one that did it. So, there's a trend. Maybe Larson's destined to be the one to win 2 again, win the first in the round of 8 and the championship. So you can kind of see that as maybe some a trend that's about to take place. But then the other way, if you think about it, that's only 3 drivers, three times since this has been since 2014 that the driver who
17
won
with this format. Yeah.
the driver who won the first race in the round of 8 won the championship.
Yep.
So you got to look at that way too. Is that just because he won the first race, statistically speaking, does not mean he's going to win the championship.
No, it doesn't. And granted, if you look at it more towards since this win in the 2017 with playoff points and stage points, and you win and you automatically advance on, that's changed things. So they're 3 for 6 if you look at it that way. 3 for the last 5 if you go to 18. But it's been 2 straight. I think these teams have evolved to know they could utilize it better. Like, why would we not start looking towards the championship round? But it's also you could risk by doing that. Clearly, you have momentum. You won the last race. If you focus too much and you lose that momentum, it's hard to turn it back on. It is really hard. So you do have to balance that. But the main thing, though, at the end of the day is him going out and winning will stop somebody else from clinching. Yeah. That's the main thing at the end of the day that they're after. But again, it doesn't really help them individually. It just
unless, of course, he's leading William Byron with 5 laps to go.
Yeah.
In that situation,
yeah,
you might not want to win. So
yeah, you might want to help a teammate. And then again, though, I'm also curious with that is, do you want, what Byron's got? Do you want to fight against him in a champion? The team would love it, but if I'm them, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go against them in Phoenix. I don't think
he'd give him the win. No, I don't think it's.
I don't either. I don't think he would. And the other thing, which I know we'll get into picks, but I won't say the driver, but there are teams out there that are now punting on the rest of the season. That they're not. Hey, we're using this for R&D for 2024 now. We don't gain anything by winning.
Yep.
We're not in the playoffs anymore. So we'll go over in the picks here pretty soon of one driver that I originally had, and then I heard this interview with him admitting that, his team owner, and I took him off. I'm like, if they're not going for this weekend, then why would I invest money to bet him? Because they openly admitted that, hey, these guys are fighting for a championship. They're locked in for these races for this year. We'd be foolish not to use this for R&D for next year. Why would we not punt on wins? Let's just test setups. Let's test data. So you also have that going on right now, which can contribute to certain things.
Let's keep in mind, too, William Byron had a big win earlier this year in Las Vegas.
Yep.
Came back to the same track, and he was okay, but it didn't transfer.
1 lap left. Nope.
So,
just 1 lap.
Yeah, so
that's
just because Kyle Larson dominated Homestead last year, if we're talking about Homestead, of course, doesn't mean that if he wants to win that he's going to win. And then the same respect for any driver going into Phoenix, like who won Phoenix this year? Byron?
That would be Byron.
Yeah.
Yep. Larson dominated. That's where it goes to them you can turn all those stones but the difference too, from what I gathered, Vegas in the spring race is a lot cooler out than this past race. So the track conditions were
it's going to be the same thing for Phoenix then.
Phoenix, actually, they say is the same. Usually it's around the same temperature. March and November are pretty
had since Phoenix, who's won who's won both Phoenix races since it's Phoenix Spin Championship? Do you have that on you right now?
You mean the spring and the fall?
Yeah,
It's never
the
happened in
championship
the same
race.
year.
So nobody's ever swept Phoenix since Phoenix has been the championship track.
1990 was the last time somebody swept Phoenix in the same year.
1990.
We're talking decades. Yeah,
Okay.
we're talking decades.
So
that's one of my
that
stats
doesn't
I
go
had
well for Byron then. Okay.
No.
Right.
So that doesn't go well for Byron.
All right. Well, there you go. So you see, it's anything's possible. And just wrapping up. All right. Obviously, we can't wrap up what went on without talking about Ryan Blaney's situation, because we talked about what his strategy would be on a track that, he had okay. He was all right there, but nothing dominant. That top 10, that would be fine. He'd be happy. Hope that somebody doesn't do well. Unfortunately, everybody did well, but he was fine. He'd been a sixth. I think he was pretty strong, actually. He had a pretty good day. And then all of a sudden, we heard the news about them taking the points away, and he was going to end up needing to definitely win a race to get in. And his odds had plummeted to 40-1 on the futures, which, by the way, I checked today at DraftKings, still 40-1. And I checked at Bovada, where I make my wagers. And I already have, because I did a previous parlay with Blaney, and I already have like $800 sitting on Blaney if he wins the championship. So I've had that for like a month, 6 weeks. But I saw 30-1 still this morning. I went, wow, I have to put a little money on him now. And just a little bit. So I invested a little bit more on him. And I don't know how much more that's going to come down. But anyway, what I want to say is I must say this. And I know that, matter of fact, Eric Estep said the same thing. And I completely agree, is that, look, you got to win anyway, almost, especially since what happened in the first race on Sunday. Nothing happened to anybody. So you're now in a situation where you may have to win because these drivers, nobody screwed up. And if that's the case, well, you're in the same position you would have been in anyway. And that's kind of how I was going to talk on this show before they gave him the points back, was I don't really look at it as that big a deal, because I would have looked at it as the way Blaney would have looked at it as, I got to win one of these two races anyway, whether I'm 50 points back or 15 points back. But yes, it does make it a little easier in case there is a little bit of maybe two drivers have issues in the next 2 weeks and Blaney doesn't win, then yes, that's a much better. Now he's got a chance to get in without winning.
Exactly. And that's, I wrote about that yesterday, was it kind of the question asked coming in this round last week was, there's the championship four pretty much already set because the same four guys, and we went through last week, it's the same four guys up front, and it's probably going to take a win, even for Christopher Bell. Right now he's 3 points behind, but that's why I feel like he was so dejected when he didn't win Vegas. Because you got to think, oh man, you're runner up, man. You were second in the first stage and third in the second stage, and you're only 3 points out. Like, what do you mean? But then you look at this isn't a great track for him, and he admitted that. Hey, I haven't been great at Homestead. In Martinsville, other than his win last year, he doesn't have a top 10. He's not good at Martinsville outside. Even in the spring race, he was nowhere to be found.
How did he get the win? Was that did he do really well? Do you remember?
Last year, he just did. Yeah, he did fairly well. I mean, he didn't lead a lot. He led a handful. Granted, it's Martinsville. A lot of laps is different than other tracks. But, yeah, I think he was kind of just around. He didn't qualify well in the final stage. He just took over the lead and never looked back. But when he's mentioning that, it's like, oh, okay, I see what he's saying. And as you said, like Blaney, Blaney finished sixth, and he got stage points. And he was, sixth first stage? I got it right here. And eighth in the second stage. That's 8 stage points and a sixth-place finish. You would think that's a good day for a track that nobody was expecting him. He still lost points in the standings. He went from -10 to -17, and that's with a sixth place. That's just one spot away from a top 5. So that's 100% agree. You look at the drivers they're chasing, which was what I was talking about last week. They're not going to make many mistakes. They're there for a reason. Truex almost did, but he still rallied back and kind of got his season going again. So if anybody of those four that I think is vulnerable, it's Truex. But the other, Larson's already in. Byron, we know what he can do. And we know what he can do at Martinsville too. We know what Denny Hamlin can do the next 2 weeks. yeah, you're kind of looking for a must win somewhere, anyways. So, yeah, I don't think anything changes. He's 17 behind, even with a sixth place finish and 8 stage points. That's not going to do him any good this weekend. It just doesn't. And so, yeah, if you win, and as I keep saying, Phoenix last year, he finished second.
Oh, yeah.
Phoenix
Had
this
the best
year,
car.
he finished second. Yeah, so he just has to get there. So if you win this round, you got to think that's a huge punch in the arm, like to get them going. So,
And that is
yeah.
why we'll remind everybody. Let me see. Where is the futures? Let's see. Oh, wait. Oh, that was the futures. The futures. Let's see if they've updated it all here. Nope. Oh, yeah. They dropped it down from 40 to 30, just like Bovada
Okay.
did. Okay. But still, 30 to 1, people. Keep this in mind again, just like we just said with Phoenix. So Blaney's 18 to 1 to win this race. All right. And he's probably not going to win this race. Again, he's going to need to hope that one of these guys, top guys, has a bad day, so he could points his way in if he doesn't win Martinsville. But if he goes out and wins Martinsville, and he's going to be, I would think, what do you think his odds are going to be next week? If he has a good week this week and nothing crazy happens, what do you think his odds will be next week? Or what do you think they should be?
See, if he's 18 to 1 this week and he's better at Martinsville, I would say, I bet you he's around 11 or 12 to 1.
Okay. So
to win the race,
which is about his normal high. He doesn't usually get into the single digits. So,
and yeah, I should preface that is that they don't typically. I feel like he's been like the most disrespected driver with odds. He should be probably 8 or 9 to 1, but I bet you he's still double digits. Just they for some reason put him in single digits very often.
Yeah. So the point is, 30 to 1 is a great number right now. Because if he, bottom line is you're saying 12 to 1 to win a race at Martinsville. You have a bonus this week. We're going to give you a bonus race too. Maybe he has a good week. Who knows? It's possible. It's not like he's awful here. You know, he's had moments. We'll get into that. So now you got a bonus. He could win Martinsville. And then you're into the championship racetrack that we just talked about, that he is going to be, if he gets to Phoenix with one of the 4, everybody's going to take a look at his history there, and everybody's going to say he's probably one of the co-favorites. They're going to have to.
Yeah, because every year they take the 4 and make him 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. So we know he's going to go down to those odds.
Yeah.
And the reason why this week I said, again, they got to maintain is I got the stat here for the playoffs, and I took out Talladega because we know how good forwards are on super speedways. So just take Talladega out. They've led 81 laps in the playoffs as a unit, the whole Ford manufacturer. These have not been good tracks. However, Martinsville next week in the spring race, they led 296 laps.
In that one race.
Ford did. That's just one race.
One race.
And then you look at and that's at Martinsville, the track that Blaney is really good at. And then you go to Phoenix, which granted they only led 37 laps, but that's because Chevrolet with Larson and Byron dominated, led 280. Toyota's led none. 0. Toyota didn't look good in that race last year, if you remember right. They weren't. Bell was just kind of there and wasn't a huge factor for the. So we know, let's play this out and say Blaney wins one of these next 2 weeks. Have a feeling Larson and Byron are going to get 2 of those spots. It's one of the Toyotas. Well, we just talked about how it's hard to repeat with all that speed coming back from the spring and the fall there. And Toyota's led 0 laps there, so that doesn't bode well for the Hamlin or Truex train. Doesn't that put Blaney as one of the favorites? Shouldn't that say statistically that he's the most consistent driver that's taken 2022 to 2023 on the same track and same speed? It didn't fall off. He was second in both.
With the new
car.
You
look at that stat. That's why 30 to 1 right now is a bargain. If you're going to bet him to win the race or think he's going to win one of these next 2 weeks, you hammer that now.
Bet the future. Yeah. Take the future instead.
That's the smarter play.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you're going to bet one of the 2. And the other thing too, keep this in mind, is the other thing that really works in your favor is that if you have Blaney now in the championship and then you get all that money invested in, you can now hedge your bet if you want to. Now you can go, maybe I don't like the other 2, and maybe I think it's a Blaney Larson one-on-one. These are the 2 guys that have the best chance to. Well, I got Blaney now. So even if Larson's 3-1, say, to win the race, he probably won't be too much less than that. He'll probably be 250, 3-1.
Yep.
You can hedge nicely there. You could put $100 on Kyle Larson if you wanted to, and make money on the deal. Well, because if you put, let's say you put $50 on Blaney right now, I mean, what is that? I mean, you're talking about $1,500.
Yeah,
$1,500 on a $50 bet. So you can put $100 on Larson and invest it, and make $300, and you're clearing $250 on the deal if you go by that kind of.
This is their championship per se. These next 3 races for him is his championship. You're gonna have to win 2 of them. That's the key. Is you got to.
You should have to. That's the whole idea.
Yes.
Because if Blaney goes into Martinsville with all of the stats that say that he's good, and he doesn't perform, well, who's that on? Is it on the team? I mean, did they let him down? Did he do something stupid? Or is it on him? Did he choke? Did he speed on pit road? Did he do something stupid? That's going to be all on him, and that's the way it should be. That's what. Yep. Are you a championship driver? Are you a championship team? So, look, if he gets screwed somehow and he ends up the best car, but something silly happens, and we've seen that happen before, well, that's different.
Yep.
You know, you tried your best, you did your best, you nothing else you could have done, but you got screwed because whatever, fine. You can sleep at night, know that, you know what, we'll get him next year. I can do this. But that's the kind of thing, and I'm sure that's what he just wants, is just, and he's going to have it. He's going to have the opportunity, even if it's not this week, next week, at the track that he's good at. He's going to have the chance to prove whether or not he's a championship driver.
Yep, and that's not a track where aero or engine in that. That's why that they led so many laps in the spring race, is just because Martinsville is not the type of aerodynamic track or any deficits between the car. It's just too small of a track for that really to matter. So yeah, it's in their hands this weekend. Yeah, they're probably fighting a losing battle just because of the speed difference. I mean, Ford didn't lead a single lap at that track last year, and you look at this 81 combined laps in the playoffs.
Which is really weird because they used to dominate the racetrack.
They did, and now they've struggled. Which, yeah, I mean, this next gen changed things, but so yeah, he just has. I think this week, don't lose much more ground. Play the stage points game. In fact, I think you're to the point too. You could gamble more. Yeah, you're 17 points out, and you got to win anyway. So if you need to flip a stage or flip a strategy, do it.
Can you do 2 tires?
Do it. No, it's like Darlington. This track, it's aged. It chews them up too much. You're always going to have to do. Now, granted, you might at this race, their strategy then could be, if you pit early, you're going to have so much quicker lap times because the newer tires compared to the other guys. But as the run goes on, you're going to fall off with the other guys. But the key is if you pit early, but you get a caution and you stay on the lead lap, now you got that track position back. So that might be their strategy. Or you could go really long and hope, well, maybe I'll just not pit later, pin these guys a lap down and hope I get a caution. So you're going to play the overcut and undercut game as strategy, which I think that's probably his and Chris Buescher's path this week. You're going to have to do something different because the guys up front, there's a reason they're going to be up front, and it's hard to beat them if you don't have some sort of strategy.
All right, I threw the futures up there quickly, and see Larson's already now 2-1, so it's making it real hard if he winds up winning, which is the reason why I went with the strategy of, all right, I'm at the point now where I'm going to lose money if Larson wins the championship, so I'm just going to go ahead and try and beat him, and pretty much Byron too, because now at 3-1, that's even a pretty low number, because I don't look at it as much as, look, I don't think there's any doubt that Larson and Byron are the 2 favorites right now. Absolutely. Yep. We know what we know what they've done at Phoenix, and we know Byron's probably going to be there more than likely, unless he really chokes up a big storm and his team, and I don't think that's going to happen. So yeah, you're now, but still, I think we are at a point where I think they can be beaten in one race. Kind of go back to what you started at the beginning of the show. It's one race, and these aren't fluky guys. Whoever gets in will have a chance, because even if Buescher wins to get in, that's going to prove that, hey, we've seen what he's done. He's defied all the odds. He just did it again. So anybody that gets in this year, I think, is going to have a legitimate chance to have a good week and to find a way to win that race. And that's kind of the way that I'm going to. Again, I still think Larson and Byron are the way to go. But even that's, you got to decide, who do I want? Do I want Larson or Byron? So you know what? Just at this stage, you're almost like, all right, I roll the dice or not, because I'm not going to make any money either way. Larson and Byron might win it all. I think Truex, you just said he saved the season potentially. Maybe he's got momentum going again. That is very possible. You're absolutely right. They had nothing, and he found a way to get into the top 10. They almost crashed a few times, but we need to see the proof in this race. This is the race that changes his season or not. Does he go and have another 15th and 18th? And if he does that, it's over. Because if they don't take the momentum from last week and use that the way kind of Larson did after he was struggling, and go out there and just, if he doesn't do that, I'm not even worried about Truex. And then it's up to whether or not you do believe that Denny Hamlin, who might be the one that's, he's sitting there at 5-1. It's a respectable number. And then you even get guys, as we talked about, the rest of the group that have good odds, that even those guys have a legitimate shot.
Yeah, I think it's still wide open. As you said, anything could happen. It's still pretty close points-wise. I mean, even Byron, he's only +9. So, I mean, you can't afford a mistake. So you almost have to play perfect. But yeah, Truex, it's the same way. And I guess, little teaser, it's one reason, I'll go into it, why I didn't pick him this week, is I just don't think you can just flip the script and just, all right, now you led a few laps for the first time in weeks and your first top 10 since even before the playoffs, go win. I don't think he's there yet. I mean, last week, I feel like he had a top 3 or top 4 car. He ran there for most of the first stage. He was 5th at the end of the first stage. They just didn't execute. Again, a bad pit call. I get what they were trying to do, but probably not the right moment for it. And he's lucky he got back up to 9th. I mean, that's, like I said, that saved, what I mean by that saved the season too, is he was outside the cut line until the very end when he made up a couple more spots. So, but I still struggle to think you're going to go from no top 10s to 9th, and he hasn't had a top 5 since Richmond, and just win. This is a good track for him, though. He's had a top 6 in every race but one since 2017.
Which is why he needs
top 5 is what I need.
Yes.
Yep, a top 5 to further your gap from that cut line is what he needs to go to Martinsville. Don't overthink it. Don't do a stupid pit call. Just don't take any unnecessary risk. And remember this race last year, he was leading, and he had that issue on pit road on his final stop. I mean, he led 28 laps in this race last year. Don't do any of that. Just get yourself the top 5, then live to see Martinsville above the cut line. Because if he's below the cut line going to Martinsville, you said, I think he's done. If they don't look like they should this weekend, then they just don't have it in them. This is the place.
That's it.
This is last week was your get right race, and you almost didn't do it, but you can chalk it up as, hey, I think if you told him going into the weekend, take the pit call away, just say, hey, you're going to lead laps for the first time in months, and you're going to get a top 10 finish. I think they take it. I think they would probably sit back and say, that sounds great to me. Let's get the Homestead. This week, we know what your track you can do with this track. Get yourself a top 5 now. Get yourself in the conversation. Then we'll take you seriously for a win. That's spoiler. That's a reason I didn't take him this week. I didn't like his odds for
even at those odds too. Yeah, no. And Hamlin, he's still the 5-1 is still solid. I mean, I think the only difference between Denny Hamlin being 5-1 and Denny Hamlin, say, being 2-1 is Denny Hamlin winning the race last week. So it's like he's still there. I mean, okay, nobody cares about the Roval 37. I mean, that doesn't mean anything. And so that means that if you take out the Roval, he's had all top 10s during the playoffs since Darlington, and most of them top 5. So he's still a serious, and he's a veteran driver. So we know he's been here 100 times. He knows the system. He knows what he has to do. So he knows winning races is not the most important thing. And there's no reason. And we're much more confident that Denny Hamlin is going to end up with a top 10 or a top 5 than Martin Truex. That's for sure.
Yep. I feel better about him. And like the exercise we did last week when we went through and went all the way back to Gateway in June and took out super speedways and road courses.
That's it.
He had his top 10 in every
top
race.
10. Yep.
And you look at this weekend, granted he's got a few wins at Homestead. The stats don't jump out at you as a guy that's going to dominate, but he could win. He's good at Darlington. And like you said, he's smart. He knows, like last week, that 10th place finish, I don't think he had a 10th place car. They kind of struggled, but he just was there. He just used that veteran presence, got some stage points, crept his way around the top 10 and just stayed there. And I think if he does that again this weekend, Martinsville, he's got 5 or 6 wins at that Martinsville. He's got 2 straight top 5s there. That's going to get him by.
Yep.
I feel like if it's going to come down to points, because at least one spot, the Phoenix is getting by on points. Hamlin, like you said, 5-1's a steal at that. Because I mean, you gotta look too. He's only 7 points behind Byron right now for second.
Yeah,
as far as being another spot above that cut line. So yeah, I feel like you could almost, as you said, especially with where Blaney is futures wise, you could go Blaney Hamlin to win money and hedge with Larson right now
at the end.
Yep, I think that's because it's. Like we talked about, Blaney's going to have to win to get there. So that's 3 of the 4 drivers right there, and you have money in them. Because if you wait past this week, if one of those drivers win, they're probably going down to 3 or 4-1. Hamlin's probably definitely going to 2-1.
Oh yeah.
Blaney's probably futures wise because of how they are at Phoenix, and they always end up at 3 and 4-1. He's probably dropping to 4 or 5-1. They're probably just going to drop him already, anyways.
Yeah.
So
if any of those
you might want to cash in. Yep.
Yeah, Byron, Hamlin, Truex, any of them win this week, they're going to be in Larson company. And I mean, Reddick, who's sitting there at 14-1 now, like if I didn't have enough money on him, I would have definitely put money on him this week, because I mean, again, we'll get into it, but he could definitely win this week.
Yep.
And he's 14-1, so it's a much lesser number, of course, than Blaney, cut in half. But still, Blaney does not have the numbers Reddick does coming into this track. So Reddick, I mean, you look at it initially when I was looking over the odds before I even did the research, and I saw he was 5-1. I was like, 5-1? What the hell is Reddick doing at 5-1? At this, I didn't understand it until I did the research, and then I'm like, aha.
Oh yeah.
Well then, so he is a serious. So if you're looking for another easy way to say, well, if he wins, and I've got more money, now I've got another driver in the 4. Now I've covered 3 drivers, say hypothetically, if you want to look at it that way. I see no reason not to risk a little bit money now if you're just starting today, future wise, on Tyler Reddick at 14-1 to win the championship.
For sure. I think this is his last shot. He's not good at Martinsville.
Yes.
He's admitted that. So this is his, in my mind, championship race. This is his chance to get there.
This is it for him. It'll be for Blaney next week. This is.
Yep. And you could make a case. I mean, you look at Phoenix in the spring, who finished second, Blaney, who finished third, Reddick. He's right there. So if he wins this week, you go into that weekend, that bodes well. So he's a strong, again, it's not just getting to Phoenix. What do you do at Phoenix? He's good there. So he's just not good at Martinsville. Whereas Bell's not good at this track. Blaney should be okay, but next week's more his thing. This is Reddick's week.
Yep.
This is his, as in stick and ball sports, I always talk about that team that might be like a fringe wild card team. They're kind of sitting there within a game of the final spot, and you're in the last couple games of the season. You're like, well, these are playoff games for them because they got to win these to get in anyways. This is that situation for Reddick. He's going to have to show up this weekend because it's the Blaney mentality. His last week, let's say he finishes 6th and scores 8 stage points, just like Blaney did. He's probably losing more ground, and he's more than 20 points below the cut line going to a track he's not good at. So this is Reddick's shot, and we'll see what they're made of. I think this is the pressure moment that he's been wanting to be put in.
That's it. Because I actually, and realistically, I do think because of that, I would say Reddick and Blaney are the 2 outside guys that I would invest my future money on and try to get lucky, and at the very least give myself hedge money in the championship with a top guy or two. So yeah, not to say Bell or even Busher can find a way, but Reddick and Blaney this week, Reddick, Blaney next week, they've got it lined up. It's all there for them. They're at tracks they've succeeded before. Go out and do it, and if they can prove that they can do it and they do it, you're in great shape. So
Exactly. Yep.
So that would be the way that we would do that. Let's now talk about this week. We've been teasing it during this entire discussion, so let's go right into it. And interesting. I'm not sure what this means, but 8 of the last 10 winners at Homestead have started in the top 5, but only 3 of the last 18 winners started on the front row. And only one of those was a pole sitter, Denny Hamlin in 2020. So again, I have no idea what that means other than just luck. I don't know. And then Ford, as we said, has not performed well at all. Just 1 win in the last 12. That was Logano in 2018. So, yeah, Ford, not the way you want to go this week. That's why they're all long shots as well and deserved. But the bottom line is qualifying matters. You do want to qualify up front, and we'll see. That's going to tell us a lot.
It does for the win. What's weird is if you look at the last few years, the other spots in the top 5 have all pretty much started outside the top 10. And this is like a track that is like a Richmond or Darlington in a sense that if you attack it too hard on a qualifying car, then you probably are going to fade, or the cars that might go a little more conservative come through the field because if you tack too hard, your tires fall off. The more your tires fall off, the slower you go and the farther back you go. So that's why you kind of see that's why I think it's interesting that 8 of the last 10 winners being from the top 5, when if you look at the finishing positions of those behind them, they're all outside the top 10. It's just,
wow.
It's real interesting.
How about time of day?
Same. It's late afternoon.
Okay.
So I thought that was interesting. It's also 9 of the last 10 races there have been won by a different driver too, which is definitely interesting as well. So I think that is something to watch for.
Have any of the drivers in the top in the playoffs? So
Larson just won there. I have the list.
Yeah, who has won in that group?
Let's see. Larson's won. Byron's won. Hamlin's won. Truex has won.
Okay, that's it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
So the top 4.
So Reddick. Yeah.
So if that trend continues, and maybe one of the other 4, Reddick.
Well, that's why I went heavily on Reddick this week.
Yeah, maybe Reddick could be it. And again, remember, we're still in that situation with only 1 race down, where you could still have a non-playoff driver, because it's happened 3 straight years where a round of 8 race has had a non-playoff driver win, and we only have 2 more to go now.
And this would be one I would say there's a lot of guys, Keselowski, Kyle, Harvick. There's a lot of guys not in right now, the round of 8 that run really good at Homestead that could easily win this thing. So, if that trend continues, I feel like this is that week that it could happen.
Okay, so now the only track that we're going to talk about that is most similar to Homestead is Darlington. And then here you go. All you got to do is take a look at this year, the 2 winners at Darlington were Kyle Larson and William Byron.
Yep.
So
kind of bodes well.
It bodes well for William Byron. Bodes well for Hendrick, that's for sure. Yep. And we start now with Kyle Larson as the heavy favorite. It's interesting because we understand it in a way, but I don't know. I still think that because he just won, I don't like the 3-1. Like if he hadn't won last week, I'd say Bell beat him.
Yep.
Beat him at the wire. And Larson is still 3-1. All right, well, I'm all right with that. I'll invest money on Kyle Larson at 3-1, even though, but I'm not doing it after he won a race in the playoffs.
No,
Now that's just
no,
completely. None of us took him, which is kind of
no.
I'm a little bit surprised, but none of us took him. Not a 3
I just couldn't for those odds. He'd be one that I'd be okay winning 2 in a row. I mean, early in the year he won 2 of 3.
He's done it
But
before.
for those odds, that just, especially in the situation where I said I feel like, and even his crew chief mentioned that they don't want to lose momentum. They do want to focus on both, but they're going to kind of go off strategy and just try. Now that they don't have to worry about it, they're just, hey, it's kind of like what Reddick and Blaney and Busher and those guys have to do. They're going to do the same. Why? They're going to swing. Basically, they can swing for the fence and try to hit home runs. It doesn't do them any good.
Aren't they also going to be able to help Byron?
They can help Byron too. Yeah. So for those odds, it's hard to think that somebody at 3-1 is going to jump out and win this race. He should probably have been priced more 5-1, and that would have been okay. 3-1 that was a no-go for me.
Yeah, the odds are just against that. It's hard enough to win two in a row anyway. And to try to do it in the playoffs and in the situation. But all right. And again, we understand why. I mean, he won the race last year, led 199 of 267. So we get all that. He also won his only ever race at Darlington to start the playoffs. So that combination there is like, well, all right. But again, there are other factors, statistically speaking, that say 3-1 is a little bit too low for us when you have other drivers that we're going to get into. Now, you took 7 picks, by the way. Again, mentioned none of us took Larson. So out of the 7, how many do you think I took?
I'm going to say 4.
I took 6.
6? Okay.
The only driver that I did not take that you took was Busher. That's it. It's the only one. I wound up taking 2 other drivers that you did not take. And that was Briscoe for $1 and Chastain. So really it was like Chastain, Busher. That's it. That's our only difference this week.
That's the driver that I was leading to earlier. I had Chastain.
Oh, what?
I had like $40 on him. And I took him off when I heard it was Justin Marks. He was the team owner that said on NASCAR radio yesterday. I heard the clip. Actually, I already had him. I had my picks. So when he sent the email, I have him sitting here. And then when I heard Justin Marks say, we're going to spend the rest of the season focusing for 2024, I was like, oh, nope. Because he said that we'd be foolish if we just stuck to the rest of the season and focused on this season.
Well, why wouldn't they focus, though? Again, this is a playoff race next year.
Yep, I think that's why.
Aren't they trying to win, though? Aren't they trying to figure out how can we win here? And if we can win here, then we can come back next year and win.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes the adage of it's hard to go 2 straight years. Usually people, if you know what you got and you're up here, then everybody else is going to catch up and you got to find something else. So that's what they said they're going to use this for R&D.
So in other words, they don't care if they don't win, but they come out of the race saying, hey, you know what? We probably could have won. Yeah. We have the information now. We could have won, but we're going to save that for next year.
Yeah. It's more of why would we go with something comfortable that these drivers like? Let's go with something where it's uncomfortable and maybe it works. Maybe it works. Hey, we didn't think about that. Look where we gained, or we went a little too far. We know not to go with next year. And so they got 2 cars and they thought, look, Hendrick's got 4 cars at the disposal. Penske's got 3. Gibbs has 4. Stewart-Haas has 4. Look at all this data they can get through the year. We got 2. We don't get a test anymore. Let's just go different directions with setups and knowing that look at the placement of these races and where they are the same next year. So we come back next year, we've got this big book, and maybe they switch in the middle of the race. Like, hey, let's try this air pressure adjustment. Let's see what this does. They're using this as a glorified test weekends. It's basically what they said. So in knowing that, originally I had him because he was a great pick for a non-playoff winning driver at 16-1, but then hearing that, I'm like, they're not trying to win. It's hard to invest money in somebody that's They're not looking at this race as let's go and do this and try to win this weekend. That's not what they're doing. And I think that's probably pretty wise to go in that direction. I think Logano, clearly, if you look at his stats, they've done that. They're focused, and he's admitted that. We're going to help Blaney, but also focus for our next year program because we've got some flaws we need to clean up. And I think now that Trackhouse admitted that, it makes sense. Let's because if they're in this situation next year, they can go right back to these notes and know what worked and what didn't work. And then because coincidentally enough, the other thing, like he mentioned, other than Homestead, you've got Martinsville and Phoenix in the spring next year. Let's learn this weekend. We've got all of our notes from this past year's spring race. It's got those notes. We'll have these notes, and we're going to combine them, and we're going to come to the spring race next year at these tracks, and let's see if what we learned works. It's a wise decision, but it also leads me to believe they may not win this weekend either. So That's why I faded.
So you have Reddick and Truex at 5-1, and I just thought it was, and you and I both agree that it just made more sense to go with Reddick than Truex. So we talked about Truex, and he does have and also let's keep in mind he only has one win at Homestead, even though he's been 6th or better in 5 of his last 6 with 2 runner-ups and a win. That's really nice. He's strong at Darlington recently. He led 145 laps in May. Wrecked late. Why did he wreck late in that one?
He was caught. We talked about Truex.
Yes.
It's because he was battling Chastain. Remember for that stage win?
Oh, the stupid. Stage? Okay, the dumb move.
Yep.
Yeah,
and he put himself in the wall.
Yeah.
So that's why he didn't.
So that
win.
was stupid. So yeah. So again, that's there. But again, at 5-1, why on earth would we invest money on Truex when we can do it on Reddick, who's been to Homestead 3 times in the Cup Series? Forget last year because he wrecked late. Do you remember where he was, by the way? How things were going last year?
Actually, Reddick last year, this was the race that I'm pretty sure he had the. Oh no, this wasn't this one. He did wreck late. It's the next week at Martinsville when he wrecked and had like concussion-like symptoms.
Oh, okay.
And pulled off the track. So this was the race he got injured.
What would he have finished last year? Do you remember?
He was probably at a top 5 early.
Oh, he would have had that. Okay.
Oh yeah, he qualified 7th.
Okay,
so he was up front.
That could have been 3 top 5s and 3 visits in the Cup Series with a runner-up, and then the other 2. You take a look at the Xfinity Series: 4 races, 2 wins, 3 top 5s. Darlington: 4 races, 3 top 5s, 2 runner-ups, and that's why you can see why he is at 5-1 and why. Compare him to Truex. If you're going to choose, you know which one you're going to choose.
Yep, that's exactly why I did. Like we talked about earlier, Truex, I feel like he needs a top 5. He just needs to do something. And Reddick, this is his championship 4 race. This is the race that's going to get him there. And he just 3 Truck Series starts, 6th, 3rd, 2nd, 4 Xfinity Series starts, 4th, 1st, 40th. Granted, that was with an underfunded team in 2021 when they just showed up. And then he, like you said, Cup 4th, 2nd, 35th, but he had a top 5. So this is track. We've always talked about how Darlington and Homestead was made for Larson. It's the same for Reddick. He likes the high line. That's the fast line here. We know Toyotas have good speed on these tracks. That's why he's 5-1. That's why he's the safer play over Truex. Because like I said, I admit if he doesn't win this weekend, I mean, I find it hard to believe if he's even 2nd or 3rd, he's going to have much of a shot next week. So he's got to win, and that stat of the different winners, it bodes well for him. So he's a trendy pick too.
22nd at Martinsville this year.
Yeah, he's a mid. That's not a good track for him. So, this is the one to snag him. Yep,
this is it. Then you have the 2 7-1 shots, and we both took Byron and Hamlin. And I mean, my top play out of the group this week happened to be Byron. Yours, it would be even because you had to invest more in Reddick than Byron and Hamlin.
Yep.
So you'll let everybody know who your top play is. But mine was Byron. And so Byron 7-1, Hamlin 7-1. You got Byron won the race in 21, led 102 laps. And actually, really, it's just been the last couple of times he's visited here that he's done well. Was on the pole last year, finished 12th. third place in his only Xfinity Series visit in 2017. And in his last 3 Darlington runs, let's remember he has a win this year back in May, and he has 2 other top 10s. So that combination with the way he's going is an absolute no-brainer. Now Hamlin has 3 wins, which is very good in 18 races. He also has 4 Darlington wins. This year at Darlington, even though he finished 25th in September, he led 177 laps. What happened to him that race again?
He won both stages, and he pit after his final pit stop, thinking he had a loose wheel, and that's what dropped him back. Or he had a better car than Larson that day. Or that night. He was probably going to win the Southern 500. So,
yeah,
yes, that's
so there you go. That's a positive thing actually, and 7th last year in this race from the 14th position. But and by the way, I know a couple of them were probably not. I mean, a couple were probably handed to him, but still, 6 poles out of his last 8. That's pretty crazy. You don't see that very often. But the fact is when you compare Hamlin and Byron, even just in totality, even just the last few races, it does seem like Byron is the way to go. But you cannot think that Hamlin won't possibly be there to win the race either. So, yeah, we both took him. And I just felt that you invested the same amount of money. So who out of the 3... how would you put him in order? Reddick, Byron, and Hamlin.
Probably just that, Reddick, Byron, Hamlin. That's how I feel. Reddick, if this wasn't a must-win for Reddick, I probably would side more towards Byron, but I feel like with a must-win, he's got more to gain here, or needs more to gain. So that's why I'd go. And then his stats back it up. Byron, just because he was so strong. If you look at 1st and 4th are his 2 Darlington starts or finishes this year. He won this race 2021, pole last year. It just seems like he could win this race. Hendrick obviously has the top package, it seems, on these tracks. So I like tracks. And then Hamlin, the only thing that concerned me was that pole string ended last year. He started 14th, finished 7th, only led 4 laps.
New car.
Yep. Last weekend, qualified 15th, finished 10th, just kind of there. Does he have the speed to get the win compared to those 2? That's why I think he could, but I feel better about those other 2. And with him and Byron, I think if you just combine all that, it's pretty even. So I get why they're both similar odds. So I like all 3. That's why they're all 3 of my top plays. And I really, because of the odds for Reddick being 5-1, that's why I invested the same amount. You wouldn't win as much, but I do feel, those are probably the 3 in that order is how I would rank them.
You know, I actually, if I'm looking at how to make money off Hamlin, I'm saying, well, qualify like he did last year, and maybe your odds are better. And as you were saying, this is a track, and we know Denny Hamlin wins most of his races when he's not around for the first half. And then all of a sudden, here he comes, and he dominates the second half, or at least the last quarter. And this is the type of layout that actually fits Denny Hamlin. So, so that's what I'd want. I wouldn't want him to be on the pole and have his odds go down. I'd rather, qualify outside the top 10, a little bit outside the top 10, and I'll get some good odds, and then I'll try to, I'm still going to pick him anyway, but that's how I want to make money off of him. I'd rather do that than see him on the pole.
Yeah, I mean, because you look last year, you got the front row was Byron and Bell, and they finished 12th Byron, 11th Bell. And then you look at, as we said, the winner, Larson. He started 5th and won. Second place was Chastain. He started 20th. Third place was Allmendinger. He started 10th. Fourth place was Austin Dillon. He started 32nd.
Crazy.
So let me find. Fifth place was Keselowski. He started 9th. So all these guys outside the top 5. So, if you could get Hamlin to qualify outside the top 5, because I think odds makers will look at that too. They'll look at all his polls, and they'll look at these last 2 weeks, and they will probably drop him to your favorite.
Yeah.
So if he starts between 5th and 10th, even better, because that goes in the wheelhouse of the outright race win. So, plus the other stat I had here, the race winner, this is since stage break started in 2017, they finished in the top 5 every stage at Homestead.
Okay. All right. So make sure that you're in the top 5 after the first stage, at least.
Yep. And then if you find the driver out of those top five, see him on those top five, you're in the top five in the second stage. And your winner is going to
double
be.
down as long as the odds are.
Yep.
Especially if it's a non-playoff driver and the odds are still in your favor, and you go, wait a second, he just finished in the top five in the first two stages, and you're still not giving him much credit odds-wise to try to take advantage.
That's the route you want to go.
Because we're going to start getting into some of those drivers. Still a few playoff drivers left, of course. We have 14-1. We have one of each, Bell and Kyle. And Bell, no top fives in 3 Cup races, just 1 top 10, 11th last year. 3 Xfinity Series races, 1 top 5, and 1 top 5 and 9 at Darlington. Not good this year. So yeah, this is not the time to take Christopher Bell, which is why neither one of us did. But Kyle Busch, now we're looking for a non-playoff driver that we have to get in their heads and thinking, all right, which one of these non-playoff drivers want to actually win, that they're not just going to go through the motions. Well, Kyle's definitely going to be one of those guys. And he has 10 top 10s in his last 11 with 5 top 5s, a runner-up and 2 wins. He's won at Darlington before, 7th and 11th this year. And in his last 2 races, he's finished 3rd. So he hasn't cooled off or anything like that. He didn't kiss the season goodbye last week and finished 3rd, and you're getting 14-1. So out of these 2 drivers, even though Bell's the one in the playoffs that really has to do something, it's clearly Kyle Busch is the one you're going with.
Oh, for sure. And if you go all the way back to 2012, he's got a top 10 in all but 1 race. You got to go back to 2015. His finishes there: 1st, 6th, 2nd, 4th, 1st, 6th, 10th, 9th. Really good there. And then you look at what we just said about Reddick. All his stats at Homestead and Cup was in this car.
There you go.
And then, as I just mentioned, Austin Dillon of all people.
Yeah.
4th in this race last year.
Yeah.
That's his teammate. He's got the same equipment. So, yeah, for 14-1, if you get that non-playoff winner, that feels right. That feels right there with Kyle Busch. Plus, he qualified 6th last week. He's got speed. He was right in the top 10 both stages. That just feels, if Kyle's sitting there, top 5 finish in both stages, that could be your guy right there.
Yeah, and let's see here. Yeah, Kyle was one of those non-playoff drivers, by the way. Back in 2020, he won at Texas when he was no longer in the playoffs. Okay, 16-1, Ross Chastain. So we've talked about him. I stood with him. You bailed on him with your late data. And here's the reason. Last time they raced here last year with the new car, he finished 2nd. In his last 2 Xfinity Series races, 9th and 3rd. This year at Darlington, even though he didn't finish well, he led 93 laps in May, finished 5th in September. And over his last 4 races, in general, Chastain, even though he's out of the playoffs, is still, and he's one of these guys that, and by the way, that's the reason why even I know what you're saying, as far as we're going to try to do we're doing this for next year. But if Ross Chastain is out there on the track and he's got a car that can win, he's going to try to win. So,
for sure.
Yeah. So that's the thing. But we'll see. Are they going to be in that position based on what you're saying?
That's what I'm curious. I had him initially. I mean, he's a Florida watermelon farmer, and they're racing in Florida. This would be a great track that you want to win at. And you ought to look, too, at Darlington, the spring race. The only reason he didn't have a top 2 is he wrecked with Kyle Larson in one of those late race restarts. That's what changed Ross Chastain's trajectory. Yes. So he was on the front row for 2 straight restarts at the end. Top 5 at Darlington this year.
Larson was the one that wrecked him. I remember that, yeah.
And then a top 5 last week. I mean, he's got 2 top 5s his last 4 when he had he has as many top 5s in his last 4 as he had in, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 races. He has as many top 5s in his last 4 as he had in 17 races.
It's the best stretch of the season for him.
It is. They're finally starting to turn it around, so I do like that.
18-1, and CJ is just going to keep putting money on Elliott, hoping that he'll pull out a win before the end of the season. But it looks like Chase has packed it in. So I understand CJ's he's already in that mode, and you might as well just run with it. But I mean, Elliott's only led 31 laps in his career at this track, and the way he's going right now, why on earth with any of that change. But Ryan Blaney is 18-1, Buescher at 20, Keselowski at 20. So here are the really interesting long shots because two of them are in the playoffs. One of them almost won last week. And Keselowski, actually last week's race was probably Keselowski's best of the year. I mean, he looked really strong last week. He just didn't go away. So that's why we both put money on Keselowski, 5th last year in this race. Darlington this year, 4th and 6th. He does have a win at Darlington. And he's got 4 top 5s here. Buescher, now because his teammates at Keselowski, that's going to help. Even though he's never in the top 10 here, that's problematic. But remember, they didn't race at Homestead this year. And he's a different driver this year. So that opens things up possibilities. He did lead 57 laps a couple of years ago here. And Darlington this year, 10th and 3rd. Blaney, if you take a look at his numbers, Darlington 9th and 9th this year. He only had 3 top 10s at Darlington, though, in 14 races, but 2 of them came this year, so that's a plus. 4 Xfinity Series races. Now, this is the thing that surprises me a little. All top 10s and 3 top 5s, but it hasn't translated yet. Now, he's only raced 8 times at Homestead, so it's not like he doesn't have time. Now, maybe in a few years, he'll start to get the feel of Homestead better, but he's had it before in the Xfinity Series, so there's that. And sort of like Buescher, he's had one good race here. Back in 20, he finished 3rd and led 70 laps. So, again, it's not like any of these guys haven't experienced something here positive that if they have a really good race or even somehow wins, you can at least look back at and go, well, there were signs. Not a lot, but there were some. But that's the reason you're getting 18 and 20-1. And you took 2 of them, the Buescher and Keselowski tandem, and I took Keselowski.
Yeah, I just didn't like Blaney. The only thing I didn't like about him was that he has 1 top 5 in Cup there. Granted, he had a top 5 last year. He made a mistake. That was a self-inflicted. He downshifted instead of upshifted, spun, and rest was history. Finished 17th. He had a top 5 car, and he led 70 laps in 2020. So it's not like he's bad at this track. And you go back from 2013 to 2016, and that's 6 truck and Xfinity starts there, 2nd, 5th, 8th, 4th, 5th, 4th. So he knows how to get around this track. I just feel like for him, because he doesn't have as much success, that they just want to probably swing for the fence and just get by on the other side. If they swing for the fence, it doesn't work. They're just going to probably try to get by. And it's one of those 2 factors is why is he going to win this one, or are they just trying to survive to get to Martinsville without having too much of a damage? Buescher, he's like Reddick. This Martinsville is not his track. And if you remember right, in 2021, he won the first stage. He just had contact in the second stage on a restart, ruined his handling, and he fell back outside the top 15. But he had a top 2 or 3 car that day. And he's at his best on age tracks. The old Atlanta, that's where his best finishes were. He won Richmond, age track, similar to this one. Darlington, as you said, he was 3rd in the Southern 500. He won Michigan, which is of higher speed, aged surface, a little not as aged as compared to like Fontana. I know they recently repaved in the last decade, but it is aging more. So these are more his wheelhouse, and I feel like he has to win. He's like in a Reddick situation, so that's why I kind of gave him the nod over Blaney. And then Keselowski, yeah, I mean, other than Talladega, the Roval, we know he's not good on road courses. He's been a top 10 every week. This is 4th last week, as you said. He led 38 of the 40 laps for Ford. I don't think they're going to jump out and lead a bunch of laps. But on the off chance some chaos happens and they're off strategy, something works, you've got to go with them. Busch and Keselowski I put as probably your top 2 non-playoff drivers that could win this race. And Buescher just, I think by swinging for the fences, maybe he lucks out and gets a caution. So for 20-1, I didn't want to risk not having him.
Yeah, I mean, for me with Blaney, is really simple because since I look at my futures and I have money on Blaney, that's the way I'm looking at it. That's why we just said take futures, not the race.
Not this week. Exactly.
I'm like, hey, I hope he wins. I want him to win. I want to go minus 400 in my pool this week because that'll put Blaney in the championship, and that's exactly what I want. Not as a fan, but financially speaking. So that's how I'm looking at it. Otherwise, I might have put a few bucks on him, and definitely Buescher too. If I was looking at one more driver to put money on, I think Buescher would definitely be the guy, especially since you're getting 20-1. And by the way, on the exact opposite of Hamlin, if any of these three, I want them to have good qualifying and practice speeds, because if they do, their odds are only going to drop a little bit. Still not, there's too many good drivers with low odds. They're just not going to be impacted. They're not going to be swayed by good qualifying or practice speeds from these guys. But that's what I want. I want to see that. I see that. And now I go from 20 to maybe 16 or 14. I want that. Bring it down. Show me that you did something in practice or qualifying to further my belief that, yeah, maybe we got something here as a long shot. So
for sure.
All right. Now, as far as the rest, you had one more driver and I had two. Again, I only put $1 on Briscoe. The reason I put $1 on Briscoe was, first of all, he's 400 to 1, which I just think is ridiculous. But he has 4 Xfinity Series races at this track, 3 of those top 10s, 2 of those top 5s. And the last time he raced at Homestead in the Xfinity Series, he won. So that's the only reason I put $1 on him. So I'm really not wasting anything there. But we both put money on Harvick. And I think it's simple. I know it's simple for you too. He's not winning Phoenix. So, because we know who wins there. It's one of the 4 drivers. So,
and he's probably not winning Martinsville. That's not a good track for him either.
Yeah. So he's got one legitimate chance based on history. With, he only has 1 win, that's okay, but he has 12 top 5s in 22 races. That's pretty impressive. And he was second in May at Darlington. So that's a good, and he was 8th year last year. And he's 35.
And remember, he almost, Hamlin pit in Southern 500, Bliss Will, Harvick was second.
Yeah, he should have won.
Remember the Reddick? Yep. Yeah. So she should have 2 top 2s and 2 starts at Darlington this year. And then you look at his finishes, and let's just go to 2008 for him at Homestead. 2nd, 3rd, 3rd, 8th, 8th, 10th. 1st, that was his championship win. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 3rd, 4th, 26th. Granted, that was 2020. 5th, 8th. The dude is a top 5, top 8 machine at this track, and you're giving me 35 to 1 odds.
And he's motivated.
Playoff
he wants to win.
Motivated. And his car is that Budweiser car that he won the championship in 2014. They have like a tribute car for him. So it just kind of all lines up that those are your 3. I didn't want to mention them earlier to tease it or to spoil it, but Keselowski, Busch, Harvick are probably your 3 non-playoff drivers that could win this race right there up front, that they're after it. They're hungry to win it. Harvick's not punting towards next year. He's not going to be racing next year. No. So this would go a long way. So I do feel it would be almost like a gut punch. You got to think for him that, now we win. This would have put me in the championship 4. But I think you could just kind of tell this would be that big sentimental win if it could happen, and it would be fun to see. And really, other than Dylan, who we mentioned, one more long shot that I thought was looking at, and again, his number was 80 to 1, so it's closer in the realm, was Eric Jones. He won Darlington last year. He was 10th this past year, Southern 500, and he was 3rd at this race in 2019. So I thought Eric Jones is probably an interesting play at 80 to 1. Truck Series was 6th, Xfinity Series 3rd and 9th. I feel like that could be a solid play, but is he going to win a round of 8 race? Seems kind of far-fetched, but for 80 to 1 wouldn't be a bad driver to throw a couple bucks his way.
Yeah, the only other driver I think you have to, a couple others just to look at. I mean, Gibbs, we know he's still racing hard for a win. He started 6th in this race last year and was 2nd in his only Xfinity Series race last year. He's 40 to 1. And Wallace, in his last 3 Darlington races, 7th, 5th, and 9th. But it hasn't translated to Homestead.
No, for some reason, it's not a.
So that's the reason why. Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, these similarities are just that. They're similarities. They're not exacts. It's just another handicapping tool that you want to use among a bunch of others. Okay, so what's going on with your website? Do you have anything specific going on?
No, just same old. Just got some previews up, and then just have race weekend stuff coming as we get closer to it.
And this Xfinity Series championship, how's that going?
Pretty status quo. What you would have thought for this round. First time winner last week with Riley Herbst. I know he ran some Cup races, but all their playoff drivers are still in the win, but they're kind of separating themselves where you kind of think that the championship four will be the championship four. Kind of like the Cup. Can somebody break into that four? Would be their question.
And then do you have a story on Blaney?
Yes, right there, Homestead.
This
it
one
is
regarding
right.
the DQ. Okay. Well,
Nope. Go back. Well, there is that one, and then I have a newer one. Go up just a little
after
bit.
we got the money, after we got him back.
It's Homestead, Reddick, and Blaney's. It's right there, kind of in the middle of that second row.
This one.
Yep. Kind of lays out everything we talked about of why this is their race they need to have.
And we didn't really talk a whole lot about it, but in general, did it sound like NASCAR did the right thing?
It did, yeah. And I'm glad they admitted it instead of hiding behind the fact like, oh, we screwed up, but let's hide this. No, they just had a malfunction with the way the part is measured, and turning that it measured illegal, but the thing they were using was wrong. So when they redid it with the right tool and it was in compliance, like,
that's weird.
Yeah, so I'm glad they at least admitted it. Yeah, that something happened.
Somebody got fired, or was that by accident?
I think it was maybe just a little bit of a bad luck thing. But somebody made a good point I noticed in one of the comments is like, can you imagine the shocks, the team on Blaney's team back in Penske, their feelings the last 24 hours? You're like, you screwed this up, you cost us all these points too. Oh no, you actually didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah. I just fired the guy. Right?
Yeah, crap. I got to bring it back. Yeah. Yep. So, for them, I think that would be the more that's like, oh, we thought this dude royally screwed up. Yeah, come to find out, it is rare to see somebody without having to appeal get their points and everything rescinded. But
it is.
But I'm glad they did it, though. They did the right thing. So I'm good with it. Now, as you said at the beginning, it doesn't change anything. He's still going to have to win anyway. So,
by the way, do they check everybody?
The top.
I mean,
five
the playoff
finishers,
drivers. Oh,
yes, they check all the playoff. They check all the playoff. The top 5 finishers, and then whoever among the playoff drivers that are not in the top 5 will also have to go through.
Okay. And during the regular season, how do they do it?
Just the top 5.
That's it. Okay.
In the regular season, yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Interesting. All right. So next week again is Martinsville. And then after that, we will preview the playoffs. CJ will be back. So there's that. And then we'll wrap up the entire season the week after. So keep the questions coming, the comments coming as well in the comment section. Lana, by the way, did explain to us that her fantasy, the league she is in, is a Survivor League.
Yep. So that's what I thought.
Yeah. We were wondering about that. So we got that explanation. And John also pledged another $1.99. So thanks to John and anybody else. And I haven't really talked about it a whole lot, but maybe if you have no idea, maybe if you somebody that hasn't been with us the whole season, all you have to do is click the thanks icon on the bottom of the video screen, and that gives you the opportunity to donate whatever you want. You could donate as less as $1.99. Or matter of fact, I did a Rutgers post-game show. I do that every week on the Rutgers football channel. And because I figured, it's a popular channel for Rutgers. I'm a fan, and I know the guy. And I said, well, if we do a live show, I told him we might be able to make a few bucks because he already has a built-in audience. And sure enough, matter of fact, this past week, I guess because they had a big win, big comeback win. We had a couple of viewers who donated $50, which was nice.
There you go.
And I know we don't have 500,000 subscribers. You get a lot more of those $50 and more on average, but to get that is nice. I'm not telling any of you out there watching this show that you have to donate $50, but that's just the way. That's what we're aiming for. So hopefully next year, the bigger we get, the more we put into this show, hopefully we'll get to that point. And I know we have some dedicated, loyal viewers, and anything you guys can do to help us grow our audience, the better. And we've promised that we are going to start a fantasy league next year. So again, waiting for anybody to come up with any suggestions on that, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. So Eric, appreciate it. We'll talk again next Tuesday.
Yep, sounds good.
We preview one more race just together. That's it. Only one more.
Yep.
And then CJ will be with us for Phoenix. So talk to you next week.
Yep, sounds good. See you then.